Welcome back, my friends, to episode 15 of Beyond Bricks and Mortar. Man, 15 weeks has flown by. Today I'm joined by Ken Purdy, or otherwise known as the Door Knocker. Now, Ken has a phenomenal story, being someone who's originally from Nova Scotia but comes to New York as well as other outer markets on behalf of Sirhan to literally knock on doors. He's built an incredibly successful business doing so, and now he's chosen to take the approach of adding value to real estate agents by teaching them the fundamental principles of door knocking, how to approach this the right way. My favorite way that Ken describes his work is that he puts the transaction last. And when he knocks on a person's door, the only thing he's thinking about is creating a meaningful connection. And that's what drives the conversation forward to actually bring a deal to the table. As always, I'm very excited for you guys to watch this conversation. If you're new here, welcome. New episodes of Beyond Bricks and Mortar are every single Wednesday, so please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And now, without any further ado, here he is, Ken Purdy. According to your website,
yes,
you've knocked on over 15,000 doors since 2009, resulting in over $90 million in sales volume in a market where the average price of a home is under $1 million.
Correct.
Now, knocking on doors is definitely a known strategy in real estate, more specifically in suburban markets where we move from house to house, but you've made it your everything. And you're now knocking on doors across multiple markets and teaching agents the art of extracting opportunity with each knock at the door.
Correct.
So my first question to you is this. What is the secret to keeping the door from slamming back into your face?
The secret, I would say, if I had to boil it down to one thing, is from the moment that the person opens the door, you have to be instantly relatable. So there's two things that I have the mindset when I'm knocking on doors. The first one is, and this is completely contrary to a lot of sales mindsets, is when I'm knocking on doors, I'm not out there to get leads. I'm not out there to get business at all. My one and only objective when I'm door knocking is to have effective and professional conversations in a 40-second time span.
So that's like the mindset going into it. It's
Absolutely.
not a get business mindset. It's
not at all.
It's a human interaction mindset.
Absolutely. Because what I do beforehand is I run the stats. So I run the numbers in the area so to see how transient the area is. So if the numbers are there, then I can just kind of sit back and relax and let the conversations take care of themselves. So having that mindset of not getting a lead, then if I can be relatable with the people from the second they open the door, I've learned how to adjust to whatever I have to adjust in order to have them respect the conversation, then that not only helps the conversation go along, but it also leaves them with a sense of a valuable short time. And I've gone from, in my mind, from stranger to best friend in 20 to 40 seconds.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, that human element of really like connecting with the person off the bat, that's really the most important.
Absolutely.
You know, being relatable, as you said. And I think that that's what like Ryan means when he says something like close on day one.
Right.
It's not about really closing the deal as much as it's developing that human interaction between
Absolutely.
two people.
Yeah.
You know, and that in our business, and I say this all the time, you know, the really big difference between commercial real estate and residential real estate is that commercial real estate is a business of the brain. You know, if the numbers make sense, you make a deal.
Right.
You could hear the sounds of
Yes.
New York City in the background. And I always keep those sounds in purposely.
Absolutely.
We're in New York.
That's right.
It's good to hear it.
That's right.
But in residential real estate, it's really a business of the heart. It's emotional.
Absolutely.
And the connectivity between two people is critical, and that humanity piece of it is so important, because when you're knocking on someone's door, you're developing that connection so that you can assist them in making what will likely be one of the biggest decisions of their life.
Absolutely.
To walk away from a home that they've lived in for could be decades.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. And locate the next home where they're going to essentially write their next chapter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've talked so many people out of selling their home because of those situations where they've been in their home for decades. And especially in the market that we're going through right now, and depending where you are, like if it's still that high seller's market, a lot of sellers have the mindset, oh, should I sell now? And I've talked a number of people out of selling their house because they never had a genuine why. Because one thing when I got into this business, I always refused to be that guy that just tries to sell things.
That pushes.
At all. I don't push at all. If anything, I pull back a lot. I mean, and I've had people ask me.
Why do you do that? Do you never consider the risk of losing the income or what comes with it?
I remember a long time ago, broker in my office back home, she said, and it's always stuck with me, make every decision as if you're being paid a salary. So because of course you care about the commission and stuff like that, though, because the numbers are going to rise to the top organically. So the people that are going to be moving with me or without me, if I can connect with them, then those are the ones that I want to work with. Because anybody else I have found in the past, if I try to convince them to sell, then you just get a really, really rough transaction, if you will. And I'm not in this business to make bazillions of dollars. Like I have where I want to be, so I'm able to focus on the lowest of low hanging fruit, and because there's enough of that, then I can just leave the rest of it to everybody
Right.
else.
I like that. And is there a particular deal that you're most proud of that originated from a knock at the door? Something that comes to mind.
Oh, boys, a specific one. Nothing stands out specifically as much as each time that I do get one specifically from the doors, because like after 15 years of being in this business, my main sole source of business is still door knocking. Like I'm probably the most contrarian real estate agent in all the industry. Like I rarely do deals from sphere of influence and family and friends. I mean, I do all the touches and stuff like that, but my main source of business has always been door knocking. So because I've learned to master it, again, not something that I was natural at, I've learned to master it. It's been able to take care of everything else. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, of course. I mean, I'm fishing for a story.
I guess I think every time I do a deal with the doors, I'm constantly reminded that no matter what happens in this world, no matter what happens with the newest technology, call it AI, call it what have you, social media, every time I sell a house to the doors, I'm reminded that nothing in this world will ever take the place of good old-fashioned
human connection
through cold door knocking.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I think that's how I would sum it up.
I'm almost surprised that you're not in the hospitality business.
Well, this is funny you say that, because the main reason I probably wouldn't be in the hospitality business because I'm a very high introvert.
Oh, interesting.
Very high introvert.
You're a high introvert.
Extremely
yet
high.
You have it in you to be knocking on doors. You don't get anxiety before the door opens?
So
I'm introverted too,
absolutely.
But in larger settings.
Yeah, so I would be I guess what you would consider a social introvert. So I wake up in the morning and my people tank is full, and then I would expel it through the course of the day. Though by the time the evening comes, stuff like that, like I'm alone. In fact, if there's people at the house, I will excuse myself and go up and literally hide in the bedroom.
Really?
And just, oh, yes, like totally
Wow.
introvert.
It's funny, like I never would have pinned you for that.
Yeah.
But people say the same thing to me all the time when I tell them that I'm introverted in large settings.
Sure.
You know, like I just don't like, if I'm in a wedding or something.
Oh, I just want to curl up into a ball and field position.
Yeah, like my wife and I, when we were dating, we would go to a lot of weddings together. And I would just be like, listen, you could find me by the carving station.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible. And people ask me, like, they find it particularly surprising. They say, oh, well, you're an introvert and yet you door knock. And I'll say, yeah, I'm an introvert and that's why I door knock.
Ah.
Because, and I'm just reminded of it just today. I mean, it's one thing to be at home, but door knocking is a very lonely job. Very lonely job. You're by yourself, and at most you're one-on-one.
So what advice would you give to other introverts who, for the exact reason that they are introverts, are hesitant to do something like cold call or door knock?
Yeah. You have to have, and it's a cliche, but it is so true, you have to have your why. And with me, when I got into this business 15 years ago, we were in a financial position where, man, like we were literally at the cusp of losing everything.
Wow.
Like it was a real bad situation. So when I had sold new construction before I got into real estate, however, it was around 2008 when the recession hit and income was, drying up, and I had to get a job or something. But because of the financial position that I put our family in for my, stupid mistakes, if you will, I was unemployable. Like there was no option for me. So I thought, oh, well, I'll just get my real estate license, thinking that it would be a quick jump to go from selling new construction just as a sales agent to a real estate agent. And a few weeks into the course, when reality hit that it's a totally different game, it completely freaked me out. So I'm panicking because of all the quote unquote competition out there. And, I'm a guy who's massive insecurities, full of shame, full of like every negative character trait you can think of. Like it was just heaped on me.
Where do you think that came from, the experience you were just describing, or do you think it's something that started in your childhood?
Childhood. Oh yeah. Life stuff. Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like we all have that, and so few of us are willing to talk about it.
Talk about it or even recognize it. And at that time I didn't recognize it. And, I was I had all that. And at the same time, I was a severe narcissist. So, I mean, like I was a bad mixed bag.
Wow.
And so
you really put a lot of work into yourself over the years.
Well, my faith has had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Though in the beginning, I was introduced just before I got my marks back for real estate. This guy was up from the next province over, and we're just driving around. He says, "Yeah, have you thought about what you're going to do for door knocking or what you're going to do for real estate?" And I'm like, I have zero idea what I'm going to do for real estate. I said, I'm freaking out actually because I have these bills to pay and blah, 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 so forth. And he says, have you ever considered door knocking? I said, absolutely not. Like, don't even approach me with that.
Your introverted self was speaking up in that moment.
I just thought of like approaching people, like what am I going to say? And then he was telling me about this. There's this guy in our company who's like in his 80s and he's been door knocking his whole life and he has this script and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And then the script kind of tweaked me a little bit. And then we were driving by the street and he looked in the street. He goes, how many houses are in that street, do you think? I said, I don't know, about 50. And he says, what do you think the chances of at least one house in that street selling? And I said, I don't know, probably close to 100%. He says, all this guy does is he teaches you how to find that one person. Mm. And the way he said that, I was like, I'm in. Like I was all in. So literally from day one, I was gifted with this script and I had my why of not wanting to lose everything. And I was able to hit the ground running. And
you still have that script?
So I still have the script, which I honor to this day.
But you've made it yours.
I've made it mine only so much as the script is the exact same as it was the day I got it.
Yeah.
Like I never changed one jot or tittle on it.
Yeah.
Because it's so precious and didn't need to. Like, it's like a franchise formula. Like it really works. And, 15 years later, finances aren't as crucial now, but it's almost like I think of the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. So he's, waking up every day and it's the same thing. But then finally he wakes up, it's the next day, he has a new life, but yet he has all these gifts that he learned that he can take with him in his future life. So it's like I woke up one day, it's like, oh, wait a second, I don't have the utility bills crashing down my wall, or the property tax bill, or my, or the mortgage bill payments, but I have this, and I wouldn't call it a gift. I had this talent that I've learned.
Yeah.
So what can I do with it? And it was about that time that the whole cross section with Ryan and the whole branding thing came into place, and then since that happened, everything's just kind of taken off. So it's been pretty cool. So the why is definitely the most important thing, because other than that, door knocking is literally just a parlor trick.
Yeah. Well, I like that you keep reverting back to the why, because, people don't buy what you do; they buy why you do it.
Exactly.
It's what causes them to invest in the human interaction between you.
Absolutely.
So, and I'm sure you've seen like some of Simon Sinek's talks on starting with why.
Absolutely.
And how the why is so important. Even using the example of Sony and saying that the people who started Sony didn't create it to make Sony known for electronics as much as they did it to make Japan known for electronics.
Absolutely.
Like that overarching objective, that thing that's bigger than ourselves.
Yes. And they had that vision right from day one.
Yes.
So now, I mean, I'm not a Sony by any means, though my mindset is, okay, here's this door knocking. Everything in the world is trying to push back against it. So what can I do to make it relevant today?
Yeah.
So it almost seems to be like a mini crusade that I'm on. So it's been kind of fun from that perspective.
I love that. When I sent you my prep email,
yes.
I never include the questions. I only kind of just give a sense of what this conversation is going to look like.
Sure.
And one of the questions I typically ask is that if there are any elements that are really off limits to you, to note those elements.
Yeah.
You noted that the only items you choose not to discuss publicly are income, as well as the number of transactions that you do per year.
Exactly.
Is there a specific reason why you choose to avoid those topics?
Yes. So other than the fact that I am constantly looking at what every other real estate agent is doing, and I try to do the opposite.
Interesting.
So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is I see my future as a little more into the training aspect with door knocking. So teaching and training other people to door knock. And I want to always position myself as relatable as possible. And I find with income sometimes it can either be a mental hurdle because it's too high for some and it's too low for others. So, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I do go so far as to say I'm a 6-figure agent that can teach you how to make 6 figures in door knocking.
Yeah.
And literally, if you can get that far, then you can repeat it and go as far as you want.
Yeah, it's really about taking care of the work.
Absolutely.
And trusting that the work will take care of you in return.
Absolutely. And I guess another reason why I don't typically discuss income as well, trying to protect, where I'd come from in the past in relation to how I would try to portray myself with other people, like to feed my narcissistic character flaw, if you will. So the less accolades I could, quote unquote, shine on myself, if you will, that would look like accolades to some and not to others. Then I purposely turn that away. Like even on my social media, and people are like going, what, are you nuts? You will never find any awards on my social media. You won't find any listings. You won't find anything on my social media at all that would even remotely give myself a pat on the back.
Well, do you believe that, I mean, I understand it's intentional, but do you believe that that's the reason why you, as you said, you don't do any business that's in your sphere of influence, or you don't do much business that's within your sphere of influence? Do you think that it's because you're not really farming that field? You're not plowing that field?
I would say that's a tough one, because I probably do connect with my past clients, like through emails, like through drip mails and stuff like that, multiple times a month.
So you're keeping the connections
I'm
there.
keeping the connection.
But it's how the connections are built, how are sourced
Right. Like,
and
I'm
built.
not picking up the phone.
Right,
like, I don't pick up the phone and call anybody. And that is also on purpose, because I always look at every activity. I always put it up against the door knocking economy. So when I think of like calling people, I'm like, okay, if I call somebody, how long is that going to take? I could be on the phone with somebody for 5 minutes. Well, that's 5 doors. I could talk to 5 people, because when you get on the phone, and again, people are insanely successful because of this, but they go through the form, like the family, the occupation, the recreation, and message. When I door knock, hi, Ken with real estate. When do you plan on moving? Like, not talking about your family, not talking about where you work, not talking about what you're going to be doing in the holidays. I'm here for business. When do you plan on moving? So because of that, I'm able to talk to more people in a shorter period of time. And because of that, I'm able to work that much more effectively and get sometimes more done than someone, who invests in other areas, which again works, but I don't want to be working, a 40-hour work week or a 60-hour work week. So that's again why I love door knocking, because I always find it the shortest distance between 2 points in relation to prospecting. Everything else would be either adding more time or you're starting to spend money. So nothing quicker than just going face to face, say, hey, how you doing?
I would think that the strategy is actually would be quite effective in this city, because I don't think anyone is really door knocking on the Upper East and West Side or the other townhouse communities in New York City.
It blows me away. It blows me away, because when I'm looking at what, the journey I've been on the last couple of years, I'm into my 3rd year now, and what I'm able to accomplish, yet not accomplish because of limitations, because I'm only here for a week at a time. I'm thinking, man, if someone was here full time, like if someone built their business on door knocking, was able to strategize your day accordingly, you could literally take over this city. Like, I mean,
I would 100% enroll you or someone like yourself to conduct a training course with my team members and to effectively turn them into door knockers. I genuinely think that what you do is so valuable, but specifically because of that human connection element.
Yep.
I'm obsessed with hospitality. I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
I've come to believe, especially over the last few years, that it's the most important ingredient of our business that goes overlooked.
Yep.
And I think that there is a core difference between service and hospitality, whereas customer service is the sequence of acts and things that we do with consistency, and service is very much a skill.
Yes.
But hospitality is the emotional response that's elicited from the service we provide. It's the spirit of the whole thing.
Yeah. And I think it's that aspect of it that helps guide the transaction through, especially through the trial times.
Right.
That's where that hospitality needs to come in more than anything, because people know that
business.
Absolutely. And especially when you're working with, in a lot of cases, people's most highest transaction in their entire life.
So they want to feel understood. They want to feel heard and seen.
Absolutely. And I think we can take that for granted, depending on how long you've been in the business,
Of course, especially young agents who are hungry and arrogant in a lot of ways and have entered the business because they believe it's easy.
Yeah.
They can do it.
I like looking at houses on Sunday, so I want to be a real estate agent. Yeah, we should go for a coffee sometime. Yeah. I've talked a number of people out of the business.
Yeah. You know, so yeah, and I've made this joke before, and we're both pretty spiritual people.
Yeah.
You're Christian.
I am.
I'm Orthodox Jewish.
Yes.
So, you know, in Judaism, when someone wants to convert to Judaism,
right.
the rabbi is actually supposed to try and talk them out of it. It's like,
interesting.
Sure you want to do this?
Right.
Like,
Count the
because
cost.
it's quite a process to convert to Judaism, at least to do it the right way.
Okay.
So when people come to me and they want to enter into real estate, I take a very similar approach.
Oh.
I'm like, listen, you need to be aware of what you're walking into because it's brutal.
It is brutal. Mostly brutal. Yeah. And it's okay. Like, as long as you know going into it and you're not going in with the rose-colored glasses, because the reality is it's not so much. But if you can go in there knowing that, then it does make it a little easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I first met you,
yes,
you offered to knock on doors to help create opportunity for my own business. I offered you a referral fee for that service, and you effectively refused.
Well,
so you're essentially doing this out of the goodness of your heart. However, I don't think you would be doing this unless you truly, truly loved the art of human connection. I'm assuming I'm correct with that one.
It's funny you say that, because especially in New York specific, it's not so much that I'm opposed to making money. It goes back to, it literally goes back to my narcissistic past. Like when it took me 3 years to get on with Sirhant, 3 years of consistent, just tugging the shoulder,
harassing Ryan
to no response.
What got him to actually respond in the end?
Well, I ended up having to buy Pro.
Ah, okay.
He couldn't, and they tried to get me to do it on Zoom, and nope, it's got to be in person. Anyway, finally got him face to face in the one-on-one Pro meeting when he met the agents himself, and
wow,
that's
now
why
he's got you knocking on the doors in New York City.
Now he's got me knocking here. So, but the thing of it is, my wife was never on board, and is still iffy
about you, like coming to other markets to knock.
Well, coming specifically to New York.
Is it a safety concern?
It would be twofold. So first of all, coming to New York from, a market that I'm in.
Right.
And if I were to make money, I mean, you want to feed a narcissistic ember.
Oh,
man, like, this is the place
New York City has the power to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
So then it's good you're only staying a week at a time.
Yeah. And, and I'm a married guy coming to New York. So, so she said, when it seemed like this might actually happen, she's like, okay, if you're going to do this, you're not making any money. I said, okay, like immediately.
Wow.
Wasn't even if that's the case, because it was never about the money.
It was never that important to you to begin with.
Never. My only objective was to be associated with Ryan and everything that, his environment. So I was like, no problem.
It's a very empowering environment.
Oh, I mean, when you look at it from that perspective, the brokerage that I'm with back home, or any brokerage, if you will, like, they would have their sales rallies and stuff like that. And, when you go to attend those, they're like $5-7 grand you can drop.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, that's like 6 trips to New York.
Right.
Like full week trips. And each time I'm here, it's literally like a mini convention, just by virtue of walking into the office. And I don't know, I mean, because I'm not here that often, every time I'm here, like, I'm never to the point where I get used to coming to the office.
Right.
Like, it's walking into a convention center every day.
Yeah.
So the money became so secondary because of that, because I was able to take when I door knock here, and when I take that back home, my world at home just became a little smaller. So it helps me become a better agent back home. So
it's interesting that you say that, because, like, if you look at like the history of like the world's best chefs,
Right.
most of them get their training in France.
Right.
Paris
Yeah.
is like the training and
Yep.
breeding ground of great chefs
Yeah.
in the world. It might not be that way for very much longer, but certainly for like the classic principles of fine dining.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I like to say that the world's best real estate professionals get their training here in New York City.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I mean, like, for example, like knocking today, I'm walking.
I was going to ask you, how was the Upper East Side knocking today?
It's different. It's a little different than Brooklyn. It's a little different than Brooklyn, but not different bad or different good. Just,
People are friendlier in Brooklyn.
I found about the same.
Really?
Yeah, I did
That's
find
great.
about the same. But again, like, when I'm crossing the streets, I don't know which street it would have been, but I just happened to look down the street and, I saw the Chrysler building. And I'm like, my heart just, whoa.
That's inspiring.
Wow, I'm door knocking here. Like, it's, it just didn't quite take the breath away, but it's like, oh my gosh, like, I'm actually doing this and having conversations with people. So this is really amazing. So yeah, I mean, that's why I don't have to be making money. Not that there's not going to be money made. It just won't come to me. So it's win-win-win on all fronts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you like? What have you taken away from your experience knocking on the Upper East Side?
So far, one day in, one of the biggest things I've taken away is there's a lot of housekeepers during the day.
Yes, there are.
Not as many homeowners that I'm able to connect with one-on-one.
I would say that you should be knocking at like 7:30 in the morning or at night.
Probably closer to night, like late afternoon or something like that. So again, though, lesson learned.
Well, I was working with a really big client that Ryan referred to me like in the early stages of my time at Sirhan.
Yeah.
And I've worked with a lot of very wealthy clients. This was by far the wealthiest.
Sure.
And I was having a conversation with Ryan once at like 7:15 in the morning. And he was giving me a tip on what to say to this person when we were going through the negotiation. So I said, okay, all right, I'll call him later this morning. He goes, no, you should call him now. I'm like, Ryan, it's 7:15 in the morning. He goes, let me tell you something. Billionaires, they don't have time after 9 o'clock. If you want to get to them, it has to be before 9. It has to be first thing in the morning. It has to be while they're getting dressed or while they're on their way to the office.
Right.
And I found that really interesting. And ever since he told me that, I have always made like my most important calls between like 7 and 8:30.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is really interesting. See, it just makes it a different kind of a mindset, different world. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I touched on this a little bit before.
Yes.
I like to consider our business as a form of the hospitality business. It melds together with my love and passion for taking care of people and delivering an experience that's better than expected.
Yes.
And also an experience that's really meaningful to the people that I work with. I draw a lot of fulfillment from that. I get the sense that you and I have that in common.
Sure.
And again, we touched on that a little bit already. But outside of door knocking and the game itself, would you say that that's what's kept you in the real estate business?
So at home, I have, like I touched earlier, in how I have no time for awards and all that stuff in my life. But in my office, I have 2 awards. Award I got the first year in the business. It was a corporate door knocking award. And that represents the man who came into my life, this 80-year-old man, Bill Nasby, who came into my life, and he trained me on door knocking.
Wow.
So if it wasn't for him, I literally would not be in the business today. And then I have a second award, and it's an award from our office that represents a certain income volume. And I have one of those awards, and I would always tie that one to my relationship with Ryan and with Sirhan, because everything that I've gleaned from Sirhan and from what I've been able to sow into it myself, that has been able to take what I've learned, and I'm still in the genesis of it, but I see it going somewhere, and it's given me something to chase after, if you will. So that's what's really keeping me going and making it more of, okay, what's next? Like, what can I touched on earlier as far as like where we were financially, so, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So pretty rough, going through all that and so forth. And of course, my kids came through it with us. So also being able to show my kids that, hey, look, this is dad. You know who dad is. You know who dad was. This is, if I can do this, then, oh my gosh, like you guys can do anything. So just to be able to, I think legacy is a bit of a strong term at this point, but and not that you can make up for lost time, but, try to show them that, hey, you know what, this is something that can, you can do whatever you want.
It's really like inspiring that next
Trying
generation.
to. Yeah, especially with dad, because again, everybody knows dad, and everybody knows what dad's really like, and all that stuff. So,
well, it seems to me like that's your why.
Absolutely, that would be a huge why. A huge why.
It's
absolutely.
inspiring people and
yeah.
I
hope so.
Being that like leadership by example.
Yeah, in some ways. Yeah. Again, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, though. Trying to take the wins, however small they might be here and there, as they come.
I love that.
Yeah.
You're from Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia.
Where most of your door knocking happens.
Yes.
However, you also visit New York, where you knock on the doors of townhouses that are anywhere from $10 to $30 million.
Thanks for reminding me.
It's New York City. What can I say? As an outsider.
Yes.
How would you describe and categorize the human interaction you've experienced with New Yorkers versus Canadians?
I love that question. And it took me a couple years to actually come up with a genuine answer. Because when I'm home, people are telling me, like, how the heck can you do that? Like, how can you, let alone get, like, how can you knock on a stranger's door in New York City without getting, like, cursed out and stuff like that? And
I feel like most of the people you're talking to have never been to New York City.
Well, it's what I realized, and it took me a couple of years. A lot of people confuse accent with personality.
And that's interesting.
And demeanor, because New York has a New Yorkness to it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, though, there's like, you got your personality types, and it's not like here's your 4 personality types, and then here's the New York personality type. No, the New York personality will fit in one of these categories. So it's literally comes down to the accent, a little more fast paced, which is totally fine. Though once I got it, like the conversations, they're very quick, they're very brief. New Yorkers, they'll tell you straight up how things are, which is I truly appreciate.
Oh, you're getting that 40 seconds.
Oh, and here you don't quite get 40 seconds, but at the same time, they're quick, pleasant exchanges, because again, I have my questions that I'm going to ask, and I'll get as far as I can get with them, depending on, where they are, if they're moving or not. Though at the end of the day, it is literally no different. It's literally just a matter of a commute. Like rather than getting in my car and going up the street to door knock, I'm getting on a plane. Like because if you break it down into the microcosm of the individual steps, it's not really that impressive. Like it's just a matter of a commute and just knocking on a different door than being at home. Like it's still a door. There's still human beings behind that door. But
is there a difference in the success rate?
That I'm still trying to. That's different. That's different from the perspective of, the market's different here. Things just move differently here. Like real estate moves different here than it does at home. Real estate is done totally different here than it is at home. So that's been something that just is, though it has zero effect as far as how the conversation is going to go out the doors. Like when I think of any lead that I've gotten, because most conversations, obviously people are not moving. So it's like, nope, on the next one, nope, on the next one, nope. So, but when there is a positive response, then they're just people. They're just people with the same insecurities and the same stuff and the same, they got the kids, they got this, they got that, and so forth. And
I saw a quote actually today on Lex Fridman's Instagram. It said, I might botch the quote a little, but he said, "Don't idolize anyone. We are all flawed human beings."
Incredibly flawed. Yeah. And how we do that. And I find that spilling over to real estate so drastically, because just touching back on, trying to talk people out of real estate, if you will, though I found that something happens when we get into real estate that we have to think that everything is all perfect and roses, when the reality is, I'll tell people, you get into real estate, like real estate is going to expose your deepest, darkest insecurities that you've ever had. Challenge is, are you going to deal with it or are you going to medicate it?
Yeah.
And
it's a high pressure business.
So
like another thing we have in common is we both have families to support.
Absolutely.
I know you have 6 children.
Yeah, lots of kids.
That's heavy. It's heavy. It's a big responsibility.
Yeah, and even
financially and.
Yeah, even with the adults, you would think it would back off a little bit, but I got a daughter getting married here in 2 months, and
wow,
Dad's paying for the wedding. So
where's she getting married?
She's getting married home, thankfully. So in 2 months. So that's
congratulations. That's
nice.
This would be the first child you're walking down the aisle.
Yeah. My daughter. So my first daughter. So she's getting a brand new last name there in a couple of months. So
I also have a firstborn daughter.
Okay.
And it's I definitely feel like a girl dad. I have 2 little girls.
Okay.
I definitely feel like a girl dad.
Yeah. Well, I remember when her boyfriend at the time came to me for the blessing, and he was silly enough to think that he was going to leave with said blessing.
Oh, you said no?
It took 3 or 4 more visits after that.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, like I was the stereotypical dad minus the shotgun.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not going to ask the details, but was there a specific reason for the reluctance, or you just were a hard ass about it?
Both. Yep. I was definitely a hard ass about it. And there were some tough things that I wanted to, walk through with them and stuff like that. And, that was like 6 or 8 months ago when they, when they got engaged. So yeah, it would have been last summer, I guess, when we had had those conversations. And, here we are, and embrace him. Looking forward to embrace him as my new son.
Did you ever think that you'd be in a place where you can pay for your daughter's wedding?
No.
It's crazy to think.
It's a blessing.
It's a blessing. Everything is a blessing. Like, I think I try to remember when things are tough, when the market is tough, and the volume of transactions is not where I need it to be in order really feel comfortable with my expenses. I try to take a moment and just remember that we have everything. We have everything.
Yeah, and I go through you're only as good as your last sale. And that's there is a strong reality to that, and I do have to remind myself of that a lot. That okay, it's not going to 100% dry up. Like, it's when those dark times are there, and they've been there, and I know that there's they'll be there again. That's
they're not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So it
just becomes a different set of problems. And it helps you, or it has the opportunity to help you to put life into perspective, to know that, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? Yeah. I could lose everything, but my family's still here. Exactly. Yeah. I remember once having a conversation with my rabbi.
Okay.
And he's like, how you doing? How's business? How's everything? I'm like, it's good. It's just, it's tough. I got the kids and the expenses, and the kids are, it's difficult, and you're raising the kid, this and that. I'm giving him like all the hard stuff, and he's listening to me, and then he looks at me and he goes, you realize this is what you prayed for, right?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, like it puts it into perspective.
Right.
We really do have everything.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely.
That really puts a lot of faith into the equation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Back to business.
Yes.
Can you walk me through a few elements of the script?
Sure.
Let's start.
So I knock on the door, and I've got 5 questions ready to go. And the main aspect with the script, though, is to honor people's time, because I'm showing up there unannounced, if you will. So I want to make sure that it is the most positive experience they've ever had at the doors, period. So when they close that door at the end of our conversation,
I liked that guy.
I like that guy. I'm not moving, but man, that was a good...
He's a good dude.
He's a good dude. And so in order to do that...
That was my first impression of you.
Well, I mean, lots of practice. So to have, the questions ready to go and being able to identify that personality right out of the gate so that I'm relatable and honoring their time, everything else will take care of itself. So when I knock on that door and people say, how can you judge somebody's personality so quickly? I said, well, it's pretty easy. When I knock on somebody's door and somebody throws the door open and they jump out onto the stoop, well, chances are they're a high level personality.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to adapt to that. I become the high level personality. And
it's really just about matching the energy.
Yeah, just mirroring. Absolutely. Yeah. And, if I knock on a door and they come to the door and they move the curtain across first and then they open the door quietly, well, then
you're quiet.
Then I have to become, my
yeah.
composure's quiet. I crunch my shoulders in and I make myself look a little smaller. Still as confident, but I'm matching them. The thing of it is, the script doesn't change for either person. So I don't adjust it to the high level person and I don't adjust it to, I just adjust my tone.
It's just like the delivery system changes.
The only thing that changes is the delivery system. So when that gregarious personality walks out, what are you doing here, if you will? I'll say, hey, Ken, I'll take a half step forward, make myself look as big as possible. And I'll say, hey, Ken with Sirhant Real Estate, when do you plan on moving? And I've got the biggest grin that you could possibly think of. And they'll say, I'm not. I have no plans on moving. And I'll say, I don't blame you. You've got a beautiful home here. And it's a genuine compliment because just by virtue of the doors that I'm knocking on, I love townhouses in brownstone. So
Me too. It's my favorite product.
Yeah, so I can genuinely say you have a beautiful home. So what that does, by me asking that question, I've removed my sales hat and I've put on my relationship hat. So you're not moving. I don't blame you. You've got a beautiful home. Thank you. Most people say thank you. And then I'll ask the first relationship question. Well, how long have you lived here? And you'll see them like, oh, well, I've been here for 60 years, 20 years, 30 years. A lot of places in Brooklyn. My great-grandfather built this home back in 1890. With his
bare hands.
But that is really cool because, and this is what door knocking does, that I don't think any other form of prospecting can do. And that is learning people's stories. They might not be moving, and that's okay because, again, I'm not there to get a lead. I'm there to have relationships, mini relationships, 40-second relationships. So if someone's been there 60 years or plus, they're not moving. So they might be moving, but chances are I'm learning they're not moving necessarily. So how long have you been here? 60 years. That's great. Well, if it's been 20 years, I might say, well, where did you move from before here? Like, where are you from? And they'll say, like Park Slope or Jersey or something like that. Oh, okay, great. Well, if you could move anywhere else, so what I'm doing now, and again, I don't usually get this far if they're not moving, but if this is a full conversation, first question is a sales question. The next 2 are relationship building questions. By the end of the second relationship building question, I'm their best friend if I've done it right. I've gone from 0 to best friend in 20 seconds. So now I re-ask the first question in a different way, and that's when I'll get the real response. And the question is, well, if you could move anywhere else, where would you move to? Well, we were thinking of moving to, blah, blah, blah. So many times, not so much here. I find people here are more direct, which I appreciate. Though you can get a lot of people that I'm not moving at the first question. Well, to be honest with you, we're moving here because I've earned that because of the way I presented myself. I'm not trying to sell you. I've earned that right for you to let your guard down a little bit. So if they say, well, actually, we're thinking of moving, blah, blah, blah. Oh, great. Well, when would that be? I want timeline or motivation. Oh, well, next spring. Oh, awesome. Well, I'm in the neighborhood seeing who's moving in the next 12 months. Can you see it happening within that time? Yep. Great. Awesome. Well, I'll keep in touch with you and get their name, and I might go for a phone number or not. I won't use the phone number. It's only to see if they'll give it to me.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, I'll be back. And I'm out of there. Because I'm not there to say, hi, my name is Ken. Will you marry me?
Yeah.
I'm there to say, hi, my name is Ken. Like if they're moving next spring, they're not going to get on the phone to a real estate agent when they close the door. But at the same time, that gives me such a head start to start building that relationship. And that whole thing happens in person from thereafter.
Yeah.
So then I follow up a week after or so with some information. And then as the market stats, update every 2 weeks to a month, I'm on their doorstep. Hey. And then 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, 2 minutes there. I don't do listing presentations. I can't remember the last time I've done a listing presentation because my listing presentation is building that relationship.
It happens in stages.
And
but by the time they're ready to make a decision, it's already been made.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when they're not, if they are moving and they're pretty hot to trot, there's been times when I knock on the door and, hey, Ken with real estate, when do you plan on moving? Oh, we're moving in 6 months. Well, the instinct is to go for the appointment. But again, I'm not there to get a lead. I'm only there to have an effective conversation.
Yeah. Jabs.
So they say, yep, I'm moving in 6 months. Oh, great. Well, how long have you lived here? I keep with the script.
Yeah.
To build that relationship so I don't come across as trying to be...
So there's no, like, are you jabbing your way to a right hook? Or is there a hook in after question 5 or... No,
there doesn't need to be.
Right.
Because they're moving.
Yeah.
Like they are moving.
Yeah.
So in my brain, I'm now their real estate agent until they tell me otherwise. And I'm just going to service the heck out of them. Like I don't need to ask for the order because they're not moving till next spring. I'm going to keep showing up. Yeah, it's not a perfect science, obviously. I mean, there's been many times where you're my agent, and the next week there's another agent's sign up there. I mean, that happens to all of us. Though by me focusing on that personal touch, I'm able to build that relationship over that longer period of time. Because, we all know the stats. I mean, they're tweaked here and there, but you have to make multiple touches before you're even considered to be in the top ranking of someone that, they're going to use, right? So a lot of people, and I've been guilty of it myself, we do the door knock and we walk away like we're a champ, but then we don't do the follow-up.
Yeah.
And when you don't do, that's where...
Follow-up's everything.
Follow-up is everything. And when people hear that, like, oh my gosh, you mean I have to follow up?
Is there like a method to the follow-up that's unique to you would say?
At that point, it's more about servicing properly from the perspective of you want to make sure that you are the item of value. So like when I door knock, like I don't have just listed flyers or just sold flyers or I'm not giving anybody anything except my business card. And at home, it's a business card on a magnet. So, and I do
like
that.
Business card on a magnet is
yep.
great. Right for the fridge.
Right for the fridge. And that's where it always goes. I mean, I had somebody run out of the door after I had walked out of his driveway. Can, and he had 2 magnets in his hand. My son just gave me this, and we did have your magnet from last year, blah, blah, blah. Like, so they're collecting, like my pictures holding people's, their kids'
That's
drawings
great.
up. So, but that is so much stronger than a flyer because a flyer and even a business card not on a magnet is going straight to the garbage.
Let me show you something.
Yeah.
I want to get your feedback on
Okay. So, he's showing me flyers.
Not as much, not so much flyers, but
Door hangers.
door hangers. Yes.
Yeah.
So we don't really knock on the door as much as we just pepper the town with these.
Right.
So I'm wondering now that like I'm learning about door knocking and the art
Right.
form, maybe this is like a voicemail almost.
So
if they don't answer, they don't pick up.
what I have done with door knocking is because, and I'm going to blame it on Sirhant branding, it really opened my eyes to I can do something with this door knocking thing that I've learned. And so it can be different than the way the other people do it. It doesn't mean that my way is the only way. I would never even remotely have the arrogance to even suggest that. All I can say is that, you know, the way I run my McDonald's franchise, if you will, like the fries are the exact same way in New York as they are in Halifax, as they are in Japan or wherever.
Just as crispy.
It's just as crispy, the same size of 1/8 of an inch or whatever they are. And they're never any longer or any shorter. So I will always ask the same questions I always ask. I will always do things a certain way. I will purposely not do things other ways. And that doesn't make it right or wrong. It just makes it
Yours.
It just makes it mine and everybody that uses it. Like, it's not so unique that I'm the only person approaching it this way. The only difference is I'm the one. I'm saying I'm not the one. I'm the one because I don't know why nobody else has really grabbed onto this. Like, I've really like, okay, let's see if I can make a business out of this. Like, really go against the grain. Like, really go against the grain on this and paint myself into the corner of the door knocker. Like, door knocker, door knocker, door knocker. So I would never, ever suggest that any other way of door knocking doesn't work, because it does. I mean, it all comes down to the act of door knocking. And if you do it enough times, of course, adjusting and learning and fixing things that are broken and stuff like that. You know, like if you're overpowering to a quiet person, you got to learn to adjust that, and learning how to, like, you know, physically stand at the door and so forth. Like the little nuances. Like, I've really taken it even deeper to say, okay, how should you stand when you're at the door? Like, right down to stuff like that. You know, when do you upswing your voice? When do you downswing your voice? Like, all that stuff. So action at the end of the day trumps it all. Because even if you don't get late, like today, like I talked to 30 people in the Upper East Side today. No one was moving. I had a 100% perfect day because I talked to 30 people in the Upper East Side of New York. Like, how many real estate agents in New York can say that?
Yeah.
Like, out of the tens of thousands of real estate agents in New York. So that's a win. And everything else would be a bonus outside of that. So
there's a bunch of townhouses that are on the for sale by owner list. I'm just going to send those. I'm going to send that to you.
Sure.
Because you can knock on that door.
Oh.
It's already, the owner's already made the conscious decision they want to sell.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, you know, agreeing to use a broker.
Yeah. And again, it all comes down to making that initial non-threatening approach.
Yes.
And I don't know if, like, you know, some people catch that I'm Canadian when I'm talking with them. Like, I've had people ask me where I'm from, and I'll say, oh, the office is just in Soho. No. Where are you from? I'm like, busted.
Yeah. Well, there's only like a few words that you're like you hear it and it's like,
oh, wait a second. That's
not. It's like a kink in the neck, and then you realize, look, you're Canadian.
But the great thing about these is, if you did use them, if you were talking to somebody and you can bring that physical presence to it, then that just adds so much more to the conversation.
Yeah, like a whole other layer.
It's a whole other layer. And the fact that nobody does it is, it's crazy that it's a task in an industry that's so competitive that can set you apart like that. Like, nothing can stop. Anybody can door knock. Like, literally anybody can door knock. I don't care if you're an extrovert, introvert, shy, not shy. In fact, I would think the extroverts might have a tougher time door knocking because they're up here all the time, and to reel that in,
to match the other person's energy,
try to have
instead of trying to get the person to match your energy.
Yes, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
What would you say is the biggest mistake you've ever made? You sure you don't want to drink for this question?
Man, it's basically to narrow it down to one. I've made so many mistakes, and without it sounding like you have to make mistakes to be successful, that's true, though the amount of mistakes that I have made does not equal the success that I should have today, if you will. When going back to before, and I still struggle, with the insecurities and stuff like that. But when I was deep into that stuff and just a bag of hammers, if you will, not willing to be self-aware was huge. And that was my narcissistic, characteristic that wouldn't allow me to be self-aware. So when I got to a place when I was able to hit that, hit on, then I was able to start, peeling back the layers, if you will. So I wish I had been in a position earlier on to recognize that and to have the humility to, take the steps to start combating that. That would be one thing, because that not only deals with real estate. I mean, that spills over to every aspect of my life, especially the personal life where it's the most important. So that would be a huge mistake from that perspective, and that would be the hugest one, because if you were to translate that to other people, I see, especially at home, it's not so easy to recognize here because it's such a different world, if you will. But at home, it's a little easier to pick out people who might be, living in their insecurities, if you will, by the way they dress, by the way they, share themselves on social media. I mean, like, there's so many tells that are out there, and it's sad because this business can be such a beautiful business, even with all the challenges and all the struggles and all the stress that comes with it. I think if we can have the courage to be self-aware to the point, I guess, where it's safe to scream it from the rooftops, because at least back home, it's it's an industry where we're encouraged to hide. We're encouraged to buy things that we can't afford to impress people that don't care about us. Yeah. So
we're also encouraged to just keep everything so close to the chest.
Oh,
and it's like I feel like you said this, like the game has the ability to be really beautiful.
It does.
Kind of like what they call soccer, the beautiful game.
Okay.
So it's like I've said this before too. It's like I feel like some of us would really just, or most of us would really just scale back the competitiveness. So many more deals would get done if the buyer's agent and the seller's agent approach the conversation with just a candid demeanor.
Right.
Like our interests are all aligned, right? We all want the same things. We all want to get a deal done. Mm-hmm. We all want to do right by our client.
Absolutely.
And we all want to earn good income.
Yep.
Understanding that, like, what's the point of the pissing contest?
Exactly.
Like, why can't we just be honest, be candid, work collaboratively? Like, this business should be a collaborative business, not a competitive business.
Absolutely.
And maybe I'm just saying that because I'm not generally the most competitive person to begin with.
Okay.
But I just feel like a lot more deals would be made and the game would be a lot more beautiful and a lot more fun and enjoyable if we could all just trust that no two chefs cook the same dish the same way.
Exactly.
And that even if you're giving away trade secrets, even if you're, giving away information, Like there's always something unique that we bring to the table, and we all have our own skill set to bring deals to the finish line.
Absolutely.
So I genuinely believe that. I feel like I wish we would let go a little bit more and just be a little bit more open.
And I think when you find yourself in those situations, sometimes when, I'm doing a deal and an agent is particularly over the top emotional, I'm thinking, you're not on the deed. Like,
yeah. Where's this coming from?
Well, I think it comes from two places. I think one place it could be coming from is, okay, let's step back for a second. You're not a real estate agent. You're a human being. What's going on behind your closed doors?
Right.
So that's my first question. And another question would be, how are you trained that every issue that comes up requires such an emotional defensive explosion out of you? Because like when I do deals, like oh my gosh, we have to have a call. We have to talk about this deal because blah, 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 blah. No, and I'll say, send me a text first. Like send me a text so I can pass it on to the client. Well, this is what's wrong. Okay, leave it with me. And I'll say, okay, it's handled. What? Because I don't let the emotion, I don't let the issue become this big thing.
It's a mushroom, yeah.
I just deal with it, and they're like, oh, like because they're expecting a fight.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving them, I refuse to give them a fight.
A lot of people are like that. A lot of people get nasty because they expect you to get nasty.
Yeah, they expect me to get nasty. And I think I also think some agents, work a certain way to qualify their value.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, some do it by the way they work. Some do it by the amount of hours they work. They think, okay, if I put more time into this and the busier that I can be, like I don't want to do door knocking because, it doesn't take long to door knock, but I could spend all day in a flyer and I go home, I could feel good about myself, but I'm not really good about myself because it wasn't really work and there's this conflict and then I do it and then, the outlet has to be somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you're not self-aware, it doesn't tend to be in a healthy way. So it's a neat business.
Yeah.
From that perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, on the heels of that, what is the one piece of advice you give to all new and aspiring real estate agents? Like, I feel like I get reached out to a lot by people who either want an internship or want to learn about real estate. And there's like a couple of core pieces of advice I always give, including maybe consider not doing this.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But what comes to mind for you as kind of the one piece of advice? You must also get a lot of outreach from new and aspiring agents.
Sometimes. Yeah. So from the aspiring agents, my main message is you are entering a business where, again, your deepest, darkest insecurities will come to the surface. And you are going to be betrayed in this business more than any area in your life.
You will be tested.
Absolutely. You're going to be thrown under the bus so many times. Your emotions are going to be stretched beyond control. If you think, not that you can handle it, that you can get through it, then everything else can be taught. Like if I can be a real estate agent after 15 years, knowing who I am, knowing natural talents versus learned talents, anybody can do it as far as logistical standpoint. It's dealing with that other stuff. For anybody that's new in the business and you've already signed the dotted line and you're in this thing, you've got an empty docket. You talk to as many human beings as possible in the shortest period of time, and don't hide behind practicing forms. Don't hide behind studying the market. You don't need the whole book. You just need a couple pages to get out there and do it. Don't worry about any of this. Like, be accountable. Be open. Like when you're having that bad day and you've been betrayed, have that go-to person that you can pick up the phone and say, "Man, I feel like crap. Like I need to take a few days." Okay, great. Take a few days. But after that few days, you got to get back on the horse.
Yeah.
And then the next time it happens, maybe we can take a few hours off that.
It's okay to feel down, but it has to be like, you have to let the feeling pass through you.
Absolutely. And I would never deny somebody from doing that. I would just say, let's train you to make that time less and less and less. So yeah, be as busy as you can early on, like front load. And again, that's why I always go back to door knocking, because it's the shortest distance between 2 points, especially in suburb areas.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not talking about acreages and stuff like that. That might be a different story. But like for subdivision areas where people live close together, like, man,
that's great advice. That's really solid advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's next for you?
Well, like immediate next or like next?
Yeah, what's your next chapter?
My next chapter is, this business has obviously been a huge blessing to me. I mean, 15 years into it, and I'm still here. Like, that's, something about 15, that just kind of makes it, a milestone. For someone who doesn't believe in retirement, like, I will be in this business until literally the day I die. So, which is cool. So my next chapter is twofold. Well, that's the thing. I want to do the same more efficiently so that I can do other things. So I want to be able to, I would take it so I would take it so far, and then I would retract. And I'm talking about training. Like, last year I was on this kick. Okay, I'm going to be a door knocker trainer. I have these goals, blah blah blah. And I'd been working on putting together a door knocking training course, and I had a couple dry runs with it. It went really well and stuff like that. And then business went a different direction. So I said, okay, well, I'm just going to take the gas off of training. It's there, it's ready. It needs to be tweaked, but let's just keep rock and rolling here for now. And then this year turns the page, and every once in a while someone will reach out, hey Ken, can we go for coffee? And we'll go for coffee. And when I leave that coffee, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this was so cool that I was able to instill 15 years of war wounds into somebody. Let's see if they do something with it. And when they do something with it,
it's very fulfilling.
Very fulfilling. Like with my daughter, like, she's in real estate and she's a door knocker, and in
Nova Scotia as well.
In Nova Scotia, and she has her branding that's just locked and loaded. She's got her moniker, Success on Purpose. That's everything's around success on purpose.
Success on purpose.
And she has inspired so many women in life. Not like, it's so beyond real estate. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like, that is so amazing. I would, further down, I would love to see a huger future with Serhant. I don't know what that would look like. Obviously something with door knocking. But yeah, absolutely. I would love to see something develop there. And beyond that, yeah, just not be overtaken by everything. Yeah. Like, I've watched a number of YouTubes. You watch these YouTube videos of these old guys are in their 90s and stuff like that, and they ask about regrets, and they tell you about the regrets. They didn't, they spent too much time working. They didn't have enough time with their family and stuff like that. And I'm like,
yeah, regret is poison.
So I'm like, okay. At first they were like nice YouTube videos, but then I was like, wait a second, they're actually sending a message. And I'm like, okay, I'm not doing this. And like, I'm not chasing anymore. Like, I don't need to do X deals and then this deals and then this deals. Like, I don't need to chase after that. Like, that's not who I am.
Right.
So I want to be that guy who has a solid business that I can inspire people and have that expand elsewhere, while being able to be a dad and a grandfather and what have you. And yeah, I mean, I might not be that guy who, leaves that big legacy, if you will. Like, I've often reminded of when Moses, just before he dies, okay? See, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. God takes me to the mountaintop, to see the promised land.
Yeah. So you will never enter.
That he will never enter, but he prepared it so that those that behind him can enter it.
Yeah.
So that it's not a fatalistic and it's not defeatist, but for some reason I'm like, and I'm by no means a Moses, but just that whole picture.
No, I understand. It's like you may not reach the destination, but you will pave the way for all of the people behind you to get there.
And that's what I think the overarching end game is, what I would love to see. Yeah, for my life.
I have no doubt that given your mentality, the ethos of what you do, really centered around human connection,
right,
and being a good person, I have no doubt that that's exactly your destination.
I hope so. Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Ariel.
I really appreciate you being here, and I know your time is limited in the short amount of time you're here in New York City.
This is great.
But ever since the first moment I met you, I had a feeling we would develop a really good friendship, and I'm grateful to have you in my life, and I look forward to many more good and great and deep conversations off the mic.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ariel.
Woo! That was fun.